Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. Look at our panel. It's great to have a panel up here in person. You're not by Zoom.
Yes.
So it's great to have you both here talking about civil rights stories in Nashville and across the state. We have with us the Commissioner for the Tennessee Department of Tourist Development, Mark Ezell, and Elliott Robinson, Program Specialist with the Nashville Public Library and their Civil Rights Room. And so now I just wanted to tell some stories. So we're talking about this podcast, this Civil Rights Trail. You said there are several here in Nashville, several in Memphis, one in Clinton. What happened in Clinton?
Well, I think Clinton, for at least me as a longtime Tennessean, was the story I didn't know about, really at all. And again, we want you to hear the podcast, and you can do that, at www.tncivilrights.com. And go to Clinton, and I've gotten to go to the Green McAdoo Center. But what the podcast takes you through is that these 12 students, again, back then, these black students were literally taking an hour-long bus ride to be able to go to school in Knoxville. They had to pay to go to Knoxville, to the public education there, and so they were brave enough, as the podcast talks about, to go to school in Clinton. And so they did that. And first day, no problem. The 12 students marched together down this long hill. Well, there were a group of white supremacists that came into the town and started causing how bad that would be. And again, the podcast goes into the antics that they did. And then the abuse started to these 12s. All they want to do is go to school where they live. And they deserve to get to do so peacefully. But that's not what happened then for days and weeks, and the treatments. And what, again, I don't want to go too much into the story, but basically a white pastor decides to escort the group, and then he is beaten badly. That rallies the town. You get a
little emotional about it.
You can't believe that 12 human beings, children, high schoolers, and so to hear Bobby Kane, who was one of the 12,
really
talk
one of the 12
about those experiences and the hatred and what they went through, and then how that town eventually learned how to do the right thing because of their bravery. But the price that was paid by those 12 is unconscionable, and so it's one of those important stories because it did become the first high school in the South, and that because of those 12 because the group was sent in to shut that process down because they'd had a few days of no problems, and that wasn't going to be okay in the South. And
so people should learn about this, listen to the podcast, hear more about this, but also along the trail, how is it marked? Is it with a marker and a historical marker? Or what would you see?
The Clinton 12 has a statue. It has a bronze statue sculpture of the 12 students, and the Green McAdoo Cultural Center. Unfortunately, the school was later bombed to the ground, and again, things that you go, that didn't happen in Tennessee. Yes, it did, and we need to know and learn from that.
And we say sometimes, well, it happened so long ago. You're interviewing one of the 12 kids.
That's right.
That's alive right now, talking about it.
That's right.
So it's not so long ago that he's still alive. So, wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to ask you, Elliott. All right, there's so many things I could choose from, but I'm going to choose Diane Nash. We heard the last caller, Wilma, mentioned Diane Nash. What about her story?
Well, let me go back just a little bit. First, let me say that we have Bobby Kane's oral history in our collection. We have an extensive oral history collection with maybe 125 or so interviews with people who lived this and who experienced these things. And it's very powerful to listen to people tell these stories in their own voices.
So if you came to the civil rights room, you could hear, is it video, audio? You could put on headphones?
There's audio, and if you can't make it to us, we can share it with you. Many of them we can share with you on audio. Many of them have transcripts that we can share as well.
Wow. Well, that must be very powerful.
Being a research facility, that's one of the great things about being able to provide those things, for free to researchers and folks who want to learn about it.
That's very powerful.
But I want to go back to, so we're starting in February, middle of February, the 13th, and this movement is growing very quickly. And you imagine being at the counter and being peaceful and being well dressed. John Lewis said that we would dress like we were going to church in order to do these sit-ins, because they were fighting against not only the old custom of separation of the races, but also the feelings that a lot of white people had about, I don't want to sit next to some dirty black people while I have my lunch. So they put on their finest clothes, and they would endure these things. They're enduring the name calling, and then when they don't respond to the name calling, things get a little worse. Maybe the condiments get thrown on you at the counter, or a milkshake on the head, or coffee being poured on you, and things like that. And there are even stories of people having cigarettes put out on their arms while they're sitting there at the counter. And you go from there to being the ones arrested, not the people who are perpetrating the violence upon you, because when we still don't respond to the taunts and to the threats, that escalates eventually to the violence and being pulled off the stools. And then what if one of my allies is sitting with me? What kind of names is he going to be called, and how are they going to feel about him being there trying to help me out? And from this point, then we go to jail, and then we have an opportunity to bail out of jail, but we don't choose that opportunity. We said, no, we'd rather stay in jail. We're going to fill up the jails, and we're going to make the guards work overtime, and you've got to put us all somewhere, and you have to feed us all, and we're all going to go to court. And it's going to slow down the system and clog things up. And now the merchants are starting to feel a bit of a pinch, which is mostly self-inflicted, because they would rather close down the counters than to serve us. And then someone comes in with an idea of, well, what if we just stop spending money downtown altogether? So an economic boycott is brought into the situation, which really allows the whole community to actively participate. Because I want my grandmother down at the lunch counter being beaten and arrested, but I can say, Grandma, maybe you shouldn't go downtown and spend your money at all. And this is Easter season, leading up to Easter, where it's a big shopping season. So the merchants are really starting to feel a pinch now. And there's the one truly galvanizing event that sends things over the top is the bombing of the home of Zephaniah Alexander Luby. He's the lead attorney for the students. He's put together this top-notch legal team, and they're working on the strategies, and they're defending the students in court. But someone on the morning of April 19th, 1960, tries to bomb his home. A few sticks of dynamite bundled together, thrown from a moving vehicle that lands in the front yard of his house. And luckily it did not make it into the house. One of the fire inspectors that showed up on the scene said that if the bomb had gone into the house, it may have killed everyone on the block. But it didn't. Luckily, it didn't make it into the house. It destroyed the front of his home, even blew out more than 100 windows at one of the dormitories at Meharry Medical College across the street. Very powerful blast. Attorney Luby was not hurt. He and his wife were in the back of the house. They were sleeping, and they weren't hurt. But the response to that bombing was really one of the greatest days in Nashville's history, I think. A march began from Tennessee State's campus with about 1,500 people, students, community members, and the news is spreading like wildfire through the community. It's on the radio. People are finding out, and they're calling each other on the phone. And by the time they march down to the courthouse to see Mayor Ben West, they've got over 4,000 people.
Wow.
And I always ask our young students in the room, say, well, how does that happen? You know, they're without any tweets going out or anything like that.
Right.
And, but I say it's the original Twitter, when I call two people and those two people call two people, and so on and so on and so on. But the site of the march itself is also drawing people in, because it's I guess about 3 miles from Tennessee State's campus to the courthouse, and people are being drawn in by the site of this thing because it's silent. We think of a protest march today, and we've got signs and singing and chanting and all these things, but these folks are silent. They're 3 by 3 coming straight down Jefferson Street. Imagine a 10-block long line of people coming down Jefferson Street, silent. And all you can hear are their feet on the pavement. People are coming out of stores and joining the march, trying to find out what's going on. They get to the corner where Fisk is, and more students join there. There are people that have told us that they were at Pearl High that day, which is a couple blocks off Jefferson Street, right about 17th or so. And folks coming over from Pearl High to join into the march, and then the principals and everyone trying to hold them in, but they couldn't. And then by the time they get down to the courthouse, they've got 4,000 people. And Mayor West, to his credit, came out, to address the folks and to talk with the students and the community. And he got laid into by Reverend C.T. Vivian, a very powerful minister and leader in this movement. And Reverend Vivian told him that he wasn't handling his moral responsibilities as a public official. He wasn't taking care of his moral responsibility. And he was allowing these young, clean-cut, nonviolent students to be beaten up and thrown in jail. They haven't broken any laws, and he didn't feel that it was right. And the mayor was embarrassed. But Diane Nash, our lady, one day I would hope that I could get a chance to meet her. She put it very plainly to the mayor and asked him, do you feel that it's wrong for people to be discriminated against solely on the basis of their race or color? And the mayor, in front of these 4,000 people and in front of the media, I imagine there were maybe, 2 or 3 TV channels at the time, maybe. Mayor West says that he felt that it was wrong for people to be allowed to buy merchandise in the stores but not be served at the counters. And she says, so do you feel that the counters should be integrated? And he said yes, in front of all these people and in front of the media and everything. And it wasn't, the switch that flipped and everything is integrated, but it's something that allows me to imagine myself as a white businessman at the time, and I'm having some really challenging conversations at my dinner table at night because I know that it's wrong to treat people this way, but I don't want to alienate my white clientele because I make good money, I've got a certain standing in the community. But maybe when the mayor says that allows me to not only start to serve folks to beef up my bottom line, but also to do what I know is the right thing. So by the middle of May is when folks started to be served at the counters.
Really?
So
the middle of May. And that happened
90 days. Just about 90 days.
You said so much there, but you said that's one of the most important days in Nashville's history.
I think so.
One of the most remarkable days. A spontaneous sort of march gathering of 4,000 people. Wow.
Yeah.
And Elliott, is it true that then Nashville was kind of held up as how you can peacefully create change?
Oh, yes.
And that didn't just influence Nashville or even Tennessee, but literally all throughout the South? Is that an overstatement, or is that...
No, not at all. Not at all.
Because I've heard that Dr. King would reference how the folks did it, Dr. Lawson's teachings and those things, that literally it gave them a model.
Yeah.
And Diane Nash was how old?
Oh, wow. 21,
1920.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You can just see her talking to the mayor.
Yeah.
And
put it very plainly. They called her Madam President in the movement. She was that powerful of a leader.
Isn't that cool?
And these tactics spread throughout the South, and it was just so powerful to think of how these students went on with the changes and with the spread of this movement. They went on to other places, all the places that we always think about, Selma and Montgomery and the Freedom Rides and March on Washington and Freedom Summer in Mississippi in '64. We think about all these places, and when you really look at them, there are students that were trained in the Nashville movement that were centrally involved in all of those places.
That's so important. All right, we're going to take a break, come back, continue our discussion. We'll be back right after this.